The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought, your live call-in show here on Baton Rouge Community Radio, 96.9 FM, here in Baton Rouge. And yes, you can call in. Excuse me for moving my microphone. I'm not prepared. You can call in 343-9927, 343-9927. A little bit of levity here in the studio. Anyway, you're free to call in, and you're encouraged to do so on the topic of the evening. The only rule, of course, is that you be respectful and voice your views as an opinion. We are not doing a right-wing rant show here. Anyhow, what I'd like to do tonight is talk about the Dakota Access pipeline protest that has been going on in North Dakota. And I know that all of you are probably aware that it's going on and basically what's happening, but I was wanting to look into it a little more for my own benefit and figured I'd pass that on to everyone here too, as well as a few other topics relating to oil pipelines and the like. And with me tonight to assist me, and they've actually been assisting me over the past week doing some research, are Lang Baker. Good evening, Lang.
Hi, Wayne.
And Johnny Parker, who's still finishing up his notes here.
Good afternoon, Wayne. We're good.
Good. Okay. Well, I figured that. You just were trying to perfect it, I would imagine. Okay, so I guess everyone knows, and those of you who don't, I'll tell you, the Dakota Access pipeline is intended to be a 500,000 barrel a day pipeline that Energy Transfer Partners wants to build right near a Native American reservation, the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, and it threatens their water supply. They say it threatens their water supply, and since it goes underneath the Missouri River in three different places north of or upstream of their reservation, I would say that it does. But anyway, the Army Corps of Engineers apparently ignored the tribe's concerns, did not adhere to the rules of the permitting process, and went ahead and issued a permit for them to build this pipeline, and that has sparked the protests on the ground there. And as far as we know, construction is still going on. But anyway, I thought I'd start out with a timeline that was published by, Mother Jones Magazine, talking about the whole issue and the sequence of events leading up to today. And I'll read it word for word just to avoid confusing myself. But February 17th, 2015, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sends a letter to the Tribal Historic Preservation Office, THPO, initiating the permitting process for the pipeline. In accordance with the National Historic Preservation Act, the Corps is required to consult with the interested tribes on the pipeline's potential impact. The THPO, the Preservation Office, responds requesting a full archaeological investigation. Okay, so they got the letter like they were supposed to from the Army Corps of Engineers, and they responded saying, well, we want a full investigation. And then they sent follow-up letters February 25th and then one on April 8th. And they claim that none of those letters were returned by the Army Corps of Engineers. On September 15th, 2015, according to the Standing Rock Sioux's lawsuit, a second form letter from the Corps of Engineers finally arrives on September 15th, asking once more if the tribal chairman would like to consult on the pipeline project. Again, the Historic Preservation Office responds, underscoring concerns about significant and unevaluated properties on the site and its exclusion from the National Historic Preservation Act evaluation process. And from this point, it's stated in their suit, apparently, that the Tribal Historic Protection Office or Preservation Office concluded that, quote, it has become clear that the Corps is attempting to circumvent the Section 106 process. Then in December of 2015, the Corps publishes an environmental assessment stating that, quote, the Standing Rock Tribal Historic Preservation Office had indicated to Dakota Access Pipeline that the Lake Oahe site avoided impacts to tribally significant sites. Close quote. The Corps eventually receives critical letters on the assessment, on this assessment that they used from the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Department of Interior, and the American Council on Historical Preservation. And I have a press release here from the Inside Climate News on August 30th, where they state the very same thing. They said that they had very strong questions about the pipeline and said that it did in fact create risks that were not being considered, a risk to the environment. There again in 2015, December, other tribes whose ancestral lands are slated to be crossed by the pipeline voiced their concerns, including the Osage Nation and Ohio tribe THPO, who wrote to the Army Corps of to the American Council of Historic Preservation. We have not been consulted in an appropriate manner about the presence of traditional cultural properties, sites, or landscapes vital to our identity and spiritual well-being. So other tribes joined in claiming they were not properly notified. And then on April 22nd of 2016, despite registering major concerns in the Section 106 evaluation process and stated misgivings from the American Council of Historic Preservation, the Corps concludes the investigation, finding that no historic properties are affected. So now the Army Corps of Engineers has concluded that there is no threat to the environment and no historic properties have been affected, and they apparently hadn't even heard from the native Indian tribes. So in July of this year, the Corps issued a final fast-track permit needed to continue pipeline construction in the 200-odd sites across 4 states in question, even though the pipeline is slated to pass underneath the Missouri River half a mile upstream of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation boundary. The final environmental assessment concludes that there are, quote, no direct or indirect impacts. And then try to shorten this up a bit, I guess. The Sioux filed an injunction suing the Corps of Engineers and asking a court to compel the Corps to withdraw the permit. 11 days later, Energy Transfer Partners, the parent company of Dakota Access, LLC, sued the Sioux chairman, the Standing Rock Sioux chairman, and other tribal members for blocking construction. In August of this year, protesters blocked the construction sites at Cannonball, North Dakota. And, of course, they were concerned about their drinking water being threatened. They're no longer, they've given up, I guess, fighting the violation of the Preservation Act, but they're saying, hey, you're threatening our water. And then Greg Wills, Division Director of Homeland Security, ordered the removal of state-owned water tanks and trailers in August that had been providing protest camps with drinking water. And then on September 3rd, the bulldozers began tearing up the property. Then they had determined the day before, I think, the Native Americans did, that it was actually a sacred burial ground. And then on September 7th, Jill Stein was there. We know Amy Goodman was also there reporting on it. And this all remained out of the public spotlight until the private security agencies on the site sicked their dogs on the protesters. And the videos of that went viral. And so where we are today, well, there was I missed one thing here. The injunction was ruled on last Friday, and the judge turned it down and said the company could go ahead and move with construction. But then the 3 government agencies came out and issued a joint statement calling on the Army Corps of Engineers to stop the construction and review things, and asked the Energy Transfer Partners, to stop constructing. And this is what the statement in the press release says. The Army will not authorize constructing the Dakota Access Pipeline on Corps land bordering or under Lake Oahe until it can determine whether it will need to consider any of its previous decisions regarding the Lake Oahe site under the National Environmental Policy Act or other federal laws. Therefore, construction of the pipeline on Army Corps land bordering or under Lake Oahe will not go forward at this time. The Army will move expeditiously to make this determination, as everyone involved, including the pipeline company and its workers, deserves a clear and timely resolution. In the interim, we request that the pipeline voluntarily pause all construction activity within 20 miles east or west of Lake Oahe. And apparently, based on what was going on yesterday, they have continued construction. I know a friend of mine is up there in the protest, or he was trying to get to the protest, and he sent a Facebook post yesterday saying that they had begun arresting specifically journalists up there and would not allow anybody who wasn't already there access to the site. So anyway, I hope I didn't run you all off with that account. But Lang, you did some research on the injunction.
What I've looked at is the court opinion that was issued last Friday,
Right,
that denied the temporary injunction. And what I saw, it's a 58-page opinion, and it goes into length in describing the background, the factual background related to the specific issue in the injunction case. And one thing I was surprised to see, well, there are several things that surprised me that I learned from reading this opinion. One is that the injunction was relying exclusively on the National Historical Preservation Act. It wasn't related to environmental protection issues at all. Though that's the injunction. Now, that's part of a larger suit, and I couldn't tell from this opinion what else was involved in a larger suit. There were references in here to the Clean Water Act, which concerns environmental issues, but the request for the injunction was on the claims that the Army Corps had not allowed the level of participation that's required under that act for the tribes in terms of protecting sites of religious and cultural significance.
Right, or from the sounds of this Mother Jones timeline, that's true. But we don't.
A couple of other things that struck me is that, and this is a quote from the opinion, domestic oil pipelines, unlike natural gas pipelines, require no general approval of the federal government. Federal government permits when it's an oil pipeline instead of a gas pipeline are only related to, like, federal lands and federal waterways or federally protected waterways. So like 99% of this pipeline is over private lands. And in another point in the opinion, they say only 3% of the total pipeline path was subject to any kind of federal permitting at all.
Interesting.
So that was kind of shocking to see that there's two different standards for oil and pipelines versus gas pipelines in terms of what kind of federal oversight and permitting processes are required.
Yeah, does that mean that I could buy a big spot of land and put storage tanks and get paid to store toxic chemicals and all that with no federal regulations if I own the property?
Well, there are other kinds of laws like environmental protection, but for pipelines.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Regardless,
if you're running an oil pipeline,
right,
there may be state laws that are required, but unless you're crossing a waterway subject to the Clean Water Act, or you're going over Bureau of Land Management or some other federal land or something like that, from what this statement and opinion is, there's no federal permitting required.
Yeah.
You said only 3% of the total length of the pipeline was subject to any kind of federal permitting at all.
And based on that, they justified turning down the injunction?
No, they were just pointing that out in the course of the opinion.
Okay.
It's kind of like a sidelight that on the way the law works that I wasn't aware of.
Me neither. And my point about the storage tanks, of toxic material was that these pipelines on private property that didn't require a permit, what are the standards for construction? I mean, what if they rupture in the future, and as we'll find out from Johnny later, they have quite frequently in American history, they could pollute property and water tables far outside that private property. So I would think that somebody outside the owner would have an interest.
Well, there are probably, or perhaps, regulations on storage facilities as opposed to transit
Well, I
pipelines.
threw you off there with my
You know.
example, but I mean, with pipelines even. I mean, when we say, okay, you own the land, you can run a pipeline across it. Well, who ensures that it's built to standards? And because that pipeline, if it ruptures, isn't going to pollute just that private property. It could pollute all kinds of stuff.
I don't know whether there are state laws that regulate that.
Yeah, and we don't. We don't have a
But
full-time staff to research that.
right, what startled me was this distinction between how the federal government views oil pipelines compared to gas pipelines.
Yeah.
So that was just a little sad thing that
Okay.
startled me in there. So far as the process goes, according to the facts that the court laid out, the tribe was given all the required input opportunities and failed to show up at meetings and cancel meetings, and were trying to, at one point I think there was a reference saying that they were trying to deal directly with the pipeline company instead of with the Corps. So I don't know, the way a court opinion works, they'll cite the record, and the record will be, thousands of
Right.
pages of documents and perhaps, testimony from depositions that the court's relying on in reaching their decision. But the opinion lays out what the rules are of the law, and then they lay out all the facts that are in the record, and they do analysis where they apply that law to those facts.
Okay.
And what they concluded here was that the tribe was given ample opportunity and on occasions failed to participate, other occasions did participate, and their concerns were addressed. But they also pointed out in here that even in the course, once something's permitted, that if within the area that's subject to permit, if they come across some previously undiscovered historical material or like grave sites or something, they have to stop and go back and submit this for evaluation of whether it rises to whatever they consider the significant threshold.
Okay, and that was part of the reason I think they said that the day before, the tribal council was due to review the claim that it was a sacred burial site, and it was the following Saturday, the holiday weekend, when the bulldozers came in and began construction. And maybe the suspicion is that they did that because they knew that provision was in there. But
well, there's that possibility. There's also a suggestion, if I'm remembering correctly what I read in here, that particular portion was off on private land where it wasn't subject to the permitting process anyway.
Okay.
Which is another thing that surprised me, that, and I guess I had seen this years and years ago, that sites, significant burial sites like that are off on private land, it apparently aren't subject to any kind of protection under federal law.
Wow, even historical protection.
Because I remember I was a volunteer at an archaeology site in New Mexico back in the 80s, I guess it was, and it was under the University of Texas. It was running out there, and we were, working on this site as, following the instructions from the people who were running the program. And they pointed out across the river on the bluff over there, there was some private land and guy out there with bulldozer looking for like pottery or something like that they could go sell.
Right.
Yeah, just plowing up the dirt to see if there was a site there where then they could go in and gather, the artifacts to sell on the private market because they weren't protected.
Yeah. Great.
And so I guess they're still not protected from what I just saw in this opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, that would that'd be an interesting thing to look into in the future. Talking about me, I'm not going to put that on you. But the other part of this whole thing was how much risk really is involved. I mean, we can sympathize with their concerns that the pipeline goes underneath the only source or the main source of their drinking water supply. It goes under it upstream of them. But what are the chances of a pipeline breaking? I mean, that's something that I thought of. We don't hear a whole lot about pipeline ruptures or leaks. I've seen a few catastrophic things on Facebook, of course. But Johnny, you looked into that. What can you tell us about the reliability or safety of oil pipelines?
Well, I guess the only way I can address that at this point, Wayne, is with statistics. So if you can bear with me here, I think these are some numbers that are important that put this risk sort of in perspective, okay? Mm-hmm. So just quoting from some sources, U.S. has the largest network of energy pipelines in the world. And if I were to guess, I wouldn't come close. The number is 2.5 million miles of pipe. Now, this series of pipelines, they're the big trunk lines, okay? The trunk lines carrying a major volume of crude, gas, natural gas, chemicals between hubs, between big storage facilities, unloading, loading facilities. These lines are typically 8 to 24 inches in diameter. These are big lines. So these line sizes, more than 2.5 million miles of pipe, okay? If you want to find out some more interesting facts about this, you can Google National Pipeline Mapping System. It shows county by county where your pipelines are. And most of this information can be found under different websites, U.S. Department of Transportation Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety, which publishes statistics on accidents, spills, etc. Okay, that's oil. How about natural gas? 210 natural gas pipeline systems. Systems. 305,000 miles of interstate and intrastate transmission pipelines. So quite a bit more of the gas pipelines than the oil pipelines. Okay, let's start a little bit on the risk side. Wall Street Journal review found there were 1,400 pipeline spills and accidents in the U.S. just in the years 2010 to 2014. According to this journal review, 4 in every 5 pipeline accidents are discovered by local residents, not the companies that own the pipelines.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be monitoring what goes in and what comes out and looking for discrepancies, but I guess humans do that, and so
80% of every pipeline accident is discovered by local residents. To me, that's astounding.
Yeah, especially, I think you saw the footage of it. There was a community that had an 8-inch oil main that was carrying crude oil ruptured nearby it, and it showed oil running down their streets. And from what I read, it made a ghost town out of the place. People had to leave. They just moved because the oil ruined everything. And here again, the Sioux are concerned that might happen to their drinking water. But anyway, what else you got?
Well, if you want to go to YouTube, the title of the YouTube, video is called America's Dangerous Pipelines. It's posted by the Center for Biological Diversity. It was posted sometime after 2013. So the data that they show on this video, which by the way is only 1 minute, 1.22 minutes, 1 minute and 22 seconds.
Yep.
I'll get that right. Y'all bear with me. Okay, so what they cite in this short video is between the years of 1986 to May 30th of 2013, there were 7,978 incidences. There were 512 fatalities associated with those incidents, 2,360 injuries, and property damage exceeding $6.8 billion.
And they provided their standard for what they consider an incident. Did you include that there? I know I saw that earlier today.
I did not.
During a break at work.
I did not, but you can go to that YouTube video, and it will show you very clearly. These are major incidents.
Right. No, the standards I looked at, it made it clear that if there was a serious environmental impact or a serious amount, anything like that, they counted it as an incident. But just a little leak, leading up to your house probably wouldn't be considered an incident.
I think it was 50 barrels for oil.
Okay.
And then they had other kinds of toxic substances that might have leaked that were at a lower threshold than that.
Okay. Thanks, Lang. Johnny, what else you got?
Well, there's some other websites out there that go into a little bit more detail. And one that I came across covers the years of 2000 through 2016. And just starting with 2000, the second incident is on January 13, 2000. Koch Industries agreed to pay a $35 million fine due to a series of oil pipeline leaks in 6 states, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, and close to home, Louisiana, and including Missouri.
A series of them.
Yes. So that included 300 leaks from 1990 to 1997, a period of 7 years. One of the allegations was that the leaks were from a lack of maintenance of the pipelines. The EPA said this $35 million fine was the biggest civil fine levied under the Clean Water Act up until that time. It said that it resolved 2 lawsuits charging that for years, Koch's pipeline subsidiary had left thousands of miles of pipeline in disrepair. So I thought that was interesting and close to home and worthy of bringing up.
Yes, and as we all know, with Louisiana, we have a lot of serious environmental problems. But, 7,000 pipeline accidents in what you said, like 13 years or so, or no, 96? Yeah, something like 17 years or something like that. It seems to me like our news media would have a story on that just about every week or so. How many stories have we seen about pipeline leaks?
Yeah, I think on the website there says something like average 300 a year. 300 of the serious threshold.
Right.
Serious incidents a year.
Okay,
so that's
so
almost one a day.
Almost one a day.
Yeah.
We don't hear about that. I'm sure, there's a good reason, like maybe they don't want us to become jaded or become immune to that sort of thing, right? But, yeah, Johnny, any other major ones? Did you come across the one that I mentioned before that I saw that showed actual black crude oil flowing through the streets of a town?
No, did not. But there was a major spill in Yellowstone, a creek in Yellowstone. Don't remember the date. I think it was back in the 90s, but I'd have to look that up. But we can certainly Google that, for those people interested in that. So there have been oil spills on protected wetlands, protected national forest, and of course Yellowstone National Park.
And Lang.
One thing that has struck me about this protest going up on there, or this action going on up there, is that it's bringing in people with a variety of different interests and criticisms about what's going on. And one of them, of course, is the historical significance of some of the sites that are impacted by this, and then there is the environmental impact of this in terms of accidents. But then another dimension that's not given as much attention and is not addressed by the regulatory system at all is the environmental impact in terms of global warming, which was the driving force in stopping the XL pipeline. And that's, I think, going to be coming to the fore as the reason to oppose these pipelines is because the fossil fuels need to stay in the ground as part of shifting to a clean energy system.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that's encouraging to me in a sense, because at least the courts are paying attention to global warming. They're not engaging in the denial that so many politicians and citizens are engaging in. But my train of thought just went out the window there with the knock on the door. But yeah, that is good too. But I just also wanted to mention too this Standing Rock protest. Oops, we got a call just at the end of the show here. Let's go ahead and take it real quickly and see what they have to say. Good evening. You're on the air with a pause for thought.
Yes, your oil flowing through the streets was Mayflower, Arkansas.
Mayflower?
Mayflower, Arkansas.
Mayflower. Okay, thank you very much. Mayflower, Arkansas. Thank you. Cool. That takes care of that. Mayflower, Arkansas. So anyway, but here again, I was going to say that we haven't heard a lot about these leaks in our media, our so-called liberal media, and really, like I said earlier, this Standing Rock protest with the Dakota Access pipeline wasn't being covered at all until they sicked the dogs on protesters, and the video went viral on Facebook and other social media. So it's kind of like the Abu Ghraib thing, and if someone privately hadn't released these things to the public, our media wouldn't have covered it, and we would never have known about it. Anyway, you've been listening to Pause for Thought. This is Wayne Parker. We've had Lang Baker and Johnny Parker making a significant contribution tonight, and I'm very grateful to you guys for doing so. We've been talking about the Dakota Access Pipeline and a few other things related to pipelines in the United States. And I thank you for listening. You all have a good evening.